Welcome to the portal to new sovereign Earth. Join us as we collectively shift realities and shatter paradigms. I'm your host, Kalina Lux. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Well, hello, you guys, and welcome to the portal to new sovereign Earth. I am super duper excited today to share with you guys this interview because what these guys are doing, it's like groundbreaking. When I think of the new sovereign Earth, these people embody that. And it's exactly everything that I've ever wanted in terms of like sacred geometry meeting sacred community. So I'm very, very excited to introduce to you guys today our esteemed guests, Lydia and Arturo. This remarkable duo is uniting the world of architecture, sacred geometry, and wellness in their groundbreaking work, pioneering basically a whole new approach to human well-being and environmental harmony. Born from Greece and Mexico, respectively, Lydia and Arturo shared a passion that not only allowed them to find divine union of the highest sorts, but also to uncover their profound interconnections between the environment, our health, and the ancient wisdom of sacred spaces and temples. Lydia, hailing from Greece, is an architect and a wellness coach, and she harnesses her deep knowledge of geobiology, ancient temples with sustainable environmental design to help people reveal the healing power of the architecture. And on the other hand, Arturo is an architect and an engineer and a psychologist who is globally recognized as an expert in sacred geometry, bringing together science, art, and spirituality in massively transformative ways. Together, they have co-founded Geophilia Institute, authored several influential books, including The Power of Sacred Location. Their joint mission is basically to explore and share how architecture, when aligned with Earth's geophysical anomalies and imbued with sacred geometry, can foster health, well-being, and conscious awakening. So today, I'm very excited to delve into this world of healing architecture, temples, sacred geometry, and much more with Lydia and Arturo, these visionaries basically shaping the future of new sovereign Earth. Lydia and Arturo, I am so honored to have you guys both here today. Would you mind kind of expanding a little bit on what you guys do for those people that might be completely new to this kind of idea and concept?
First, thank you so much for all your beautiful words and your sharing from your heart and your passion. Thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting us. Like we really resonate with your energy and your frequency. And it's amazing in these times that we're going through in the planet to get together and connect and share. So, well, if I could put it more simply in terms of what we do at Geophilia, like our main mission, because we have like a lot of different things that we put together, but our main mission is how to create spaces that are supportive for our health, our well-being, that can support our mission, that can be healing, and also they can help us have these outer states of consciousness, if you like, what people call transcendence. So it's like a mixture of things, and also depends on the project, but it's really important to understand, to begin with, for people that have never heard of these concepts, that through the science of epigenetics and Bruce Lipton, right, we know that the environment is basically very responsible for our health and well-being, and it's actually not our genetics. And if you expand that, apart from the environment of our cells, our intracellular fluids and all these things, we are a colony of cells, and we live like in this petri dish that is our space. Like we are constantly in a building space 90% of our time. So we interact with that space in terms of shape. We know now from all our research and other people's research that geometry emits these waveforms, and it's like a specific field that we interact with. It's called scalar waves also. And we interact with the colors. We already know that colors have a different interaction and different frequency. We interact with the chemicals and the materials. And there are so many things that our body is communicating with this environment all day. So it's a huge difference if we're embedded or surrounded all day in a space that has, for example, sacred geometry, right? And sacred geometry, now we know that is linked absolutely to unified physics. It's about the structure of time space. It's not just about an idea, right? Or a philosophy or something that was just used in ancient temples and we didn't know why. So I'd like to share something that's like.
Yes, and also what Lydia was saying, what we do in geophilia is to blend, it's something called fractality. So we put together the internal world and the external world because you can have a lot of fractality. Fractality it's a very simple concept, which means that whatever part you have, whatever geometry, whatever shape you have in the total, you reproduce that same geometry in every part. And we have fractals absolutely everywhere in nature. Nature, that's the way it creates life, through fractality. And many scientists have taken this concept of fractality and apply it to all the technology that we use. Like we have mobile phones, antennas inside the mobile phone because it's a fractal antenna. Instead of having a long rod, you have the same distance, just in a fractal wave.
The same length, yeah.
Yeah, the same length. You have fractals, for example, in the way nature starts expanding, and the way our bodies, our lungs are. You have this beautiful concept of fractality in our DNA. If you think about it, you can take one cell of your body, and inside that DNA, you have all the information of your whole body. That's a fractal. Every little part, you have the information of the whole. And we work with different physicists, with Dan Winter, Nassim Haramein, their unified physics. They want, and they're already doing that, they're blending the micro and the macrocosm through these theories. And the basic foundation of their theory is fractality in something that it's called golden ratio, like the proportions that we use, that it's applied in architecture, that it's applied in art, in music. You have these two concepts, fractals and golden ratio. So when you put these two things together, you create life, you create beauty, you create harmony. And that's what it has been our passion to do since many, many years. More than 2 decades, my passion has been sacred geometry. Also, Lydia has been temples and all these electromagnetic, invisible worlds. The idea of linking the fractal external and the fractal internal is to have a coherence, what we call space harmonics, which has to do of how you feel in an interaction between your internal world and the external world. Because we realize that it doesn't matter if you live in a very harmonic space outside, if internally you're not okay, if there is no coherence. You can be living in the most amazing temple and the best palace in this planet, but if your internal world is not fractal and is not in balance, it will make no connection. The opposite is true. You can be living in a perfectly balanced internal world, fractal, and outside the environment can be not supporting you, not helping you to keep developing this. So when these two worlds match, you have magic, you have scientific magic.
And just to add on this concept of fractality, just for people to understand, fractality is basically what keeps the universe together. I know it sounds like a very big statement to make, but it's this self-similarity that you go in a smaller scale and in a bigger scale and you find the same patterns or the same structures, the same way we can find, for example, like river, the roots of the tree and the river and our lungs, have this same pattern. That's a simple example to understand fractality. So what we'd like to do and what we have tried to do all these years in our work is what, for example, Nassim Haramein is doing with linking quantum physics, which is a very, very small scale, and astrophysics, which is a very, very big, together. And he's proving that actually there is no two different types of physics. It's one. It just applies in different scales, but the same laws govern it. So he's actually unifying it. We're in the middle with architecture, and as humans, we're in the mesocosm between the very, very small and they're very, very big. So it just would make sense. So we are aligned in this fractal scale, if you'd like, is embedded in this continuation of fractality. So the same way universe designs in all these scales, we need to understand this wisdom and apply it in architecture. And that has been our path, let's say.
And something that has happened recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, like clients that have paid us with crypto, actually the project goes far easier. I don't know if it has to do because crypto is actually a fractal.
Yeah.
Crypto Bitcoin, it's made in a way that it's decentralized, which is exactly what fractals do. Because Bitcoin is like an organic flowing energy that the whole code and the whole system itself is trying to express in a free market, as free as it can be, but it's trying to express naturally and growing naturally as fractals. If you think about, for example, nature, you put these huge pieces of concrete in cities, and nature will always find a little crack to express, everywhere. So the amazing thing of Bitcoin and crypto is that they're fractals, they're decentralized, and they can keep expanding and growing everywhere.
And Bitcoin, actually, we were just these days in Monerotopia, and we connected again with so many lovely people. Jeff was there, Jeff Berwick from Acapulco, and Rafael was there. We had this discussion about, he was sharing about the flower of life being present in the structure of Bitcoin. So it's so exciting to see how new technologies and new ways of finance and new ways in different things, for example, architecture or other things, are coming back to this concept of fractality.
Oh my goodness. This is so amazing for so many reasons. I did not know that last bit about the crypto, but so just a little backstory for those of you guys listening. I met these beautiful people at Anarcapulco, and it was like a resonance. It was like zzz, like bees, like zzz, and I didn't know why at the time. And I ended up getting sick. I was on a detox just before Anarcapulco. I did a lymph cleanse and I got really, really sick, like day 2 and day 4. And I actually logged in, and the only talk that I was like, I can't miss was theirs. So I watched it from the couch in my Airbnb, and I was just like, whoa. And then, we met up. We're like, yes, we're going to do an interview. And finally, things are aligning for it today. And I've been reading their website, and I'm seeing that you work with Nassim Harriman and Dan Winter. And I've been a fan of Dan Winter for like a decade, and nobody else knew of him around me at that time. I'm a certified geobiologist also, which is crazy. I don't use it, but I have had this concept in my life just to like deal with my own spaces. And also, I have a temple here that I'm now about to build a pyramid on, and I'm reading your website and I'm like, whoa, I have had chills and shivers so many times. I was like, whoa, just reading the definitions and concepts in it. And I mean, and it even goes back to like university and physics. When I first learned about like harmonic convergence, I was like, dude, there's so much here that we could extrapolate and apply to these things. And here you guys are just focused in on it, expanding it and getting PhDs and writing books in it. Like, it's incredible what you guys are doing. And I'm blown away at the opportunity to get to bring this to at least my community and the world more at large, because what you're doing is so essential. I wish that you could come here to the property and scope out my land and like stay with me for a while to discover, how to plan out my community that I want to build. But that will happen one day. I am so fascinated to hear, Lydia, temples are so dear to my heart also. What have you learned? Like, can you tell us a bit about what makes these temples so profoundly healing? And can you just talk a little bit about your work and research with that?
Sure. So that started like a passion, right? When I was very young, I grew up in Greece, and we have like thousands and thousands of temples. Wherever you look around in Greece, there's just temples. And there was something about it that made me think that they look pretty complex, and their design and their proportions. And then in the Greek temples, we also have something that It's like a geodesy, which means that if you start linking temples in between them, you find perfect triangles and things like that in almost all of them, which is pretty crazy. So I just had this, they appeared to me like an enigma. And then I was looking into where are they placed and why are they placed there? And it's just that all the things that I was reading, they were giving me some answers, but it was not like a complete answer that was fulfilling to me. So later, and I started traveling and I visited other temples around the world. I just had so many questions. So that led me to start this PhD that I did, because I just wanted to find answers that were not enough for me. One of my biggest questions was, how were they designed? How were they built? And why? What was the true reason? Because for me, honestly, it didn't make sense that people built the Egyptian pyramids, or they built the Teotihuacan pyramids, or these huge structures, megalithic monuments all around the world, and stone circles that need tons of resources, tons of money, tons of time and energy just for a religious purpose, which I don't mean to undermine just the religious purpose, but usually as humans, we invest in something that really gives us back like something important, like a big value, right? So that didn't make sense to me. And then I wanted to know more. And what I can share with you, like a synthesis, for people that want to know actually more in detail, I have a course in the Resonance Academy that is called The Sacred Science of Ancient Temples. So I have condensed there all the main findings, which I can share with you now, like a synthesis. Basically, all the temples that I have looked in around the world, and obviously that's an ongoing research, have three main parameters or three main characteristics. They're universal, no matter what background you're looking at, or culture, or religion, or architectural style also, if you like. So one is the earth link, what I call the earth link. And the earth link is all about the geobiology, right? For people that are new to this subject, geobiology basically means how geo, or earth, or our location, interacts with biology, with our biology. So how can our location where we are living can affect our health positively or negatively? And that was a big question that I had. So I found out that the majority of temples are built on some sort of geophysical anomaly, which is a fancy word to say a place where the values of the Earth's radiation have a big shift, either a positive or a negative, like higher or lower. So there are temples that are built over underground water, or over a fault line, or over other type of discontinuity. So there is one type of rock and another, and they meet, and exactly there is where they place the temple. Or there are places like megalithic mounds in that was like in Illinois, in USA, for example. There is an example that there is a huge gravity anomaly, and that's where they placed this stone chamber. So another question that derived from there is, how did they know? And I get that question from Envy, right? And how was this placement so exact? And the truth is, when I went to this journey, I tried to answer one question, and then another question popped up. And so it was like this, like continuous fractal question journey. But what I can tell you is that this first part of the three of them, which is the earth link, is what gave the temple its power. It works like a battery, or like a charge supply. And then you will ask me, why did they need the charge? And then I will continue with the next two. So the next two are the design of the building body, which includes sacred geometry. It includes specific parameters and properties of the materials they use. That's why they carried huge blocks of granite, or the blue stones in Stonehenge, or the red granite, for example, in Egypt, for 600 miles across rivers and lakes, because they needed a specific material, right? And also the dimensions. So they have designed the proportion and the geometry, but in what size are we going to build it? And that was very important, because the size, that dimension, is what many builders in the past talked about, sacred dimensions, which is something that has to do with the Planck scale. And that's a whole nother conversation, but it's basically the smaller unit we have known as the shortest wavelength of light we can observe in in our reality, because there are many realities, but in our reality, that's like a cutoff value. Anyway, so the building body design was made to structure through sacred geometry. And now we have the science to prove it since many years, that sacred geometry can structure a field, right? It gives different properties to water, and there's ongoing research in that. So it structures that electromagnetic field that takes from the earth. And then the third part is the archaeoastronomic connection, or the sky connection. So the absolute alignment with celestial events. So basically what I'm trying to say, that it was like a powerhouse connecting earth and sky, and then that could be used for healing, for altered states of consciousness, for seed enhancement. It's so many. It's all in the research that I did in more details for people that want to look, but this is like the synthesis that I can give without overwhelming you too much. And what we have tried to do, and that has been also my passion since many years, is how can we recreate this sacred space that temples had? Not in a religious way, a sacred space, but now we know that sacred space has scientific properties.
So cool.
Okay.
So amazing. I'm so fascinated with this in particular because I feel extremely called to doing these kinds of things for healing and rejuvenative like processes and detoxes. I'm all about this. I love the whole idea. Arturo, you mentioned in your bio that you found sacred geometry like 15 years ago, which is unheard of because a lot of people barely, or maybe even more by now, I don't know. But like a lot of people are barely finding it in the last like couple years or 5 years. And I'm just so curious. Sometimes it's like we're coded, right? Like you're talking about like the fractality of things, like energetically we're coded to live these purposes. So clearly I know that that's why you guys have come together to do this at this time. But I am curious, how did you find that? What inspired it? And then what have you done with that? Like, I'm assuming you're an artist. I read the part of your website where you guys do art too. Yeah, could you just give us the download on that?
Sure. I was 15 years at that time, like some decades ago. And I literally felt that there was a way to blend both the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And I was very thirsty for that. Since I was very young, like actually since I was like 6, 7 years old, so I was making my own alarms and my own things in electronics. I love that thing. And I was very, very thirsty for knowing something that can be mathematic and scientific and measurable. But at the same time, I had this passion for the unknown, for the mysticism, for the hidden, invisible worlds. And then one time, at that time, green light, literally, I don't know if it was my imagination or it was real, I don't know, but a green, vibrant, fluorescent light starts, like I start seeing it and start rotating, and it was sacred geometry. It was like a kind of an octahedron with a torus. It was something I didn't know what it is. So I don't know if it was something external, physical, or it was my internal world manifesting inside of me, but it was this something giving me the answer. So
when he was 15.
Yeah, that's when I was 15. And that was the beginning of going online. I started just, images, geometry. I remember I put like geometry, moving geometry, something like that. The biggest amount, quantity and quality of images was from that winter at that time. He was the only one with a very, very high level presence on the internet with animations of sacred geometry, etc. So I saw that, and it's like, that's the way to go. This is exactly what I see. That winter, there was also at that time another guy called Drumbalo Melchizedek. He had some books. Not at that time, he had some courses. I was just so thirsty to know what is this geometry. And then from there, I link it to sacred geometry and all the whole story. And I had a Kundalini experience. And from that Kundalini experience, when I was 15, 16, it was more clear, like the way to go, the way to blend these two energies, or this feminine, masculine energy, is through sacred geometry, because in sacred geometry, you have the sacredness, the feminine aspect, and the geometry, the masculine aspect. And from there, I just devoted my life to that. I started to translate Dan Winter, all his material, his books into Spanish, because there was almost nothing in Spanish. And from there, at that time, I was opening like courses and organizing him seminars and congress and tons of things, tons of work. We end up traveling like in 15 or 16 countries all around Latin America and Spain. It was just like passion about it. And from there, many companies were created from like that experience, like how to apply this sacred geometry into healing internally, and then how to apply this into architecture externally. And I have studied all these things in university, but the truth is that I have had first experience. And then I study why this thing happened.
Okay, that's amazing. What a blessing to have found Dan Winter that young. I mean, gosh, that is like, ooh, life-changing. I didn't know that you had done all of that. It's so beautiful that you're doing that work in Mexico specifically, because like that land and those people are so divine. And like, I mean, I'm biased obviously because my ancestors come from there, but like, yeah, I've got a sweet spot about Mexico and the consciousness there for sure. I've heard it described as like a showcase for the new earth. Like you can go there and kind of select, oh yeah, you know, I'd like to put this on my property and this. It's like a window shopping for all the things new sovereign earth. And I really like that description. So you guys have been mentioning a little bit in your website and in this talk, geopathic stress. And I'm curious, I live at the center of the convergence of 4 rivers. I have literally an 80-foot waterfall right there. Like I can see it out this window. To the back of me, there's a small one that's more seasonal that kind of comes through this way. Then I have a main river like this and another 70-foot waterfall, like maybe a 5-minute walk right there. So on top of that, like there's just water. I'm literally on an island surrounded by water. And I'm building a pyramid in the center of the river island because there's an actual little tiny island in the center of that. Wow. It's really cool here. There's no cell signal. There's no 5G, 3G. Right now we're on Starlink, which you can tell is kind of even, right? The joys of
Starlink.
Exactly. So totally. And I've heard mixed reviews around living near that much water. But then you've also mentioned that temples are oftentimes placed on top of water. Now, I happen to know that in these rocks in the river, well, I live in a place called Oro Coves, literally coves of gold. And like every dowser, I come from a lineage of dowsers as well. And my mom and I are like, whoa, there's got to be gold here. And I've seen personally the quartz lines in the rocks. So I feel like we are a good site for a temple, like a very sacred temple. But also, could you talk about like, are there any negative impacts of living near that much water? And what could it maybe do? Like, what are the negatives versus the positives? And could you give us also a little definition of geopathic stress?
Awesome. Thank you for the question. Such a good question. It's something that I also had like a big question for myself when I was doing this research. And I was like, is geopathic stress something negative by itself? And then with the answer I found, I stopped using the word geopathic stress, and I will explain why. So geopathic stress, I mean, actually geopathic is a Greek word, comes from geo and pathos. So basically it's where geo or earth has a pathology, has like a problem, let's say, right? And then stress. What I did find out is that what I call geophysical anomalies, it's an anomaly in a value, right? The value is not the same as it is around. It's either higher or lower. And that can be caused by underground water, can be caused by a fault line and many other things. That by itself is just what it is. It's just a neutral energy that is there. Now, what creates the different effects is what we call the dosage. And it's a phenomenon called hormesis. What we see in that is basically any kind of stress, maybe fasting, right? Excessive exercise, dieting. It can be anything you want, even emotional stress or radiation stress. If you have that on a long term, meaning on a high dosage over the long term, that is what causes a problem. Now, if you get the same thing over a short time, it's actually healing. And there are so many examples of that. So in hormesis, we have an optimum dose, which is a short dose for over a short amount of time. and then the effects go to the negative. I will give you an example which is shocking, and this is from peer-reviewed papers that I was reading when I was writing this book, The Power of Sacred Location. We have cell phone radiation, right? And everybody knows by now that it can cause potentially cancers and head cancers and all these things. But what don't people know is that doctors did laboratory tests on rats that had already cancer, and they gave them a short dosage of microwave radiation from phones, and the cancer was destroyed. So it's really mind-blowing. But everything is about the dosage. If you overdo exercise, you will actually have negative effects. Now we know if we overdo fasting, your adrenals get destroyed and your blood sugar can, I did it and I know the effects of that. So, any kind of, we know emotional stress. We know that if like life or the divine or whatever you want to call it, the universe puts us through some stress, we are forced to evolve and we can have a breakthrough. So it can be absolutely healing. But if we have chronic stress ongoing from whatever things that are going on around us, that can really make us sick. So exactly the same, and there is a whole research around that, scientific research, applies to radiation hormesis. What I'm trying to say is that short amounts of a geophysical anomaly exposure are actually healing. And that's why temples needed to be placed there. But nobody was living in the temples. So what I say to everybody, and clients also ask me like, oh, should I put my house where the lines cross? And I said, no. One thing is to design, a temple or a healing center or a meditation place. And another thing is to design your house. So in your house, you want more neutral energy. You want no geophysical anomalies, because over the long term, sleeping over that, and that's all in the research that I did, can put down your immune system. It can create cardiovascular problems and hormonal issues and so much more over the long term. So what we want in a house, we want more neutral energy. And yes, we want also sacred geometry, but we don't want the intensity of the very complex sacred geometry we see in temples. We need something a little bit milder. And that also depends on the person. I have to tell you that, because the more higher frequency someone has experienced in their life in terms of their consciousness, the more they can manage this intense energy, for example, from sacred geometry, right? So to reply your question is there is one direction to go, how you build and design and where you place your house and what you do with a temple or a healing space. And in your project, for example, when you have crossing rivers around, it's one thing. I don't know under your house if you have underground water. So if that's the case, that can be problematic. Thanks God we have solutions for that. Like in Geophilia, sometimes we work with existing buildings, with existing apartments that we do a renovation and the bed cannot be moved or anything. So we put a special bio mattress on top and we have some devices, and there are solutions. But if you have a plot of land and you are just looking where to place it, I will say, please avoid the geophysical anomalies, but you can place your meditation or your pyramid temple place exactly there. That's what you need for that place.
Amazing.
I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you knocked it out the park. Yes. It's almost like the concept of homeopathy, like a little tiny dose.
Exactly the same. About hormesis, one of the first things they said that it applies to is in homeopathy. And I've been in homeopathy since I was 4. So I was like, that makes sense now. Like, I understand how it works.
It's amazing how so many different concepts kind of converge to like reaffirm. I mean, it is truly incredible. Wow. Okay. So now I wonder, fault lines in bioresonance, with your experience in sacred geometry, Arturo, have you recognized like any sacred geometry patterns to fault lines and in the world and sacred sites? Have you found that there's sacred geometry patterns in those, and where might we be able to like discover how to like see those ourselves?
You mean like underground water? Like if they're located in
anything, either underground water or sacred sites or fault lines or anything that has kind of like if you see them on maps and stuff, have you noticed any kind of like sacred geometry patterns, or what kind of sacred geometry patterns have you seen on a macro scale on the Earth?
Yeah, I understand the question. Well, all types of geometries. There's something called sacred geometry grids, and it's like grids that many scientists and some other geometers they have been playing with, like Buckminster Fuller and Hugh Charleston, Huygens, Becker, Hurtak, Dr. Enrique Ortiz, he's from Mexico actually, a biologist. They have been playing to see if all these sacred sites or these important locations, they're linked through some patterns. And some of them, yes. Some of them, I think they're very forced, to make it happen. But some of them, yes. And what they have discovered that actually there is hundreds or millions of different grids. And I do believe grid for every, or a sacred geometry grid, for every single aspect of biology, like for every insect, for every animal, for every group of humans, we resonate with different types of geometries. Like literally we're tied. This is the work of Rupert Sheldrake, that he was proposing a theory hypothesis that is based on morphogenetic fields, which has to do with what is the geometry of every field. And he discovered that everything that is alive has its own geometric field, like everything. There has been many architects and many urbanists that wanted to locate and to see if there is a correlation, for example, between, I don't know, like pyramids and spots that has gravitational anomalies.
Power spots.
But I have never seen something like, I can tell you it's a pentagon or it's an hexahedron or something like that. No. What we do know from unified physics is that the universe is kind of breathing, like inhaling and exhaling. The way it inhales and exhales, it creates two types of geometry. It creates pentagons, which is dodecahedrons. It's a type of geometry that is based on pentagons. And then it creates, when it's compressed, it creates other type of geometry that it's called cube octahedron, which has to do with what many people know, like the flower of life, or hexagons, something type of geometry that is more oriented to harvest and to be in equilibrium, like to stabilize the energy. Whereas everything that has to do with the pentagon geometry or the dodecahedronal, like icosahedronal geometries, they're more to expand and distribute this energy. But yes, it's not one single geometry. There are like so many.
And what Arturo is describing right now, I find it like really important, because the work of Nassim Haramein shows like the structure of time space that is based on this flower of life in 3D, which is based on hexagons. And that's the stable reality. It's the stable situation of the universe. But when there are things that are created like black holes, and there is a new universe and matter and all these things, the birth of matter comes through the pentagons, because that's the portal of creation. Fractality, because our body's fractal, is full of golden ratio. All the plants and anything we can find, like in the, let's say, created universe, has all these proportions based on the pentagon, which is all the work of Dan Winter. So these two guys, they're just what are the two sides of the same coin. When everything like energetically is stable, or where something is moving and something is created. So that is what Arturo did, and put these two things together in his book that he wrote, the Sacred Geometry and Architecture. And I think it's amazing, and it's so important to bring these two together.
Yeah, I made a whole research on like all the details of how these actually come together.
It's incredible. There's so many crossovers here. You mentioned in your website that the pentagon is masculine and the hexagon is feminine. Is that correct? Because that blew my mind. You can see I'm heavily involved in a crypto project called Darrow, which is, the symbolism is that. But my question to you is how is that, and what shape corresponds to the inhale and the exhale? Like, what is feminine, what is masculine in regards to the inhale? Go on.
Well, what I can share about that is, and this is something that all the esoteric traditions, ancient wisdom share, everything is literally relative. So something is feminine compared to something else that is less masculine, but there can be another thing to that other, the second one, that is actually even more masculine. So that one to that one is more feminine. So what I'm trying to say is that there are many geometries, but as far as we know now, we have these two basic geometries of Pentagon and Hexagon. And if you compare those in between them, yes, the hexagon is passive, is more stable, and it's more feminine. So it's just meant to hold. Imagine that you're just holding the energy. In common words, we will say hold space for someone. Mm-hmm. It's literally that. That's what the hexagon does. In the pentagon, which is more masculine, is where things move a lot. There's a lot of action and there is distribution of energy. So the energy doesn't stay there statically, passively. It's very active and it moves things. And maybe there are other geometries, and there is heptagon geometries, and there are more other things. So if you start to compare, you have to go into relative comparison between them, because there is no such thing, in my opinion, as an absolute feminine in the universe and the absolute masculine energy. There is always something to compare it to. So that's what I can reply. I don't know more if you have something else to share.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I really resonate with that. That's really what I've been discovering in my experience as well. So let's check out the next question about land assessment. I really, really liked how you guys assess land and your whole process. Like, I was like, oh my God, sign me up now. But something really stood out to me when you were mentioning activating a certain space versus, I think it was imploding others. I'm not sure if that was the correct word. I don't remember that one. What is that about? Could you just tell us about that?
Sure. So what we do with the land analysis, it's like a whole process that I found out through my PhD and my research. And we use special geophysical maps, and then we analyze them through a device, and it's like a whole thing. But what I can tell you is the important work of also what you just asked in your question is not just finding the geophysical anomalies. Okay, so for example, where there is underground water or an underground fault, but there are areas in the land that have, let's say, higher levels of coherence or more implosive energy, as you just mentioned. And there are areas that are more explosive. And also that has to do with how energy moves. So energy moves from that specific place in that torus field, upwards or downwards. And what we do is, for example, with implosion points that are really important, we can either select that area for a house or a building, or if not, if it's like exterior, we can activate it through a sacred geometry pattern, through a little temple or a pyramid. It can be a dome, and we can use special material to activate it in let's say whatever we're using in the floor. You have like this special powder that is like a mixture of rocks and other things, and we can weave geometries in the floor so that can activate further the implosion or the coherent energy we have found there in that place. We can do also the contrary, like areas that are more disharmonic, like different little structures, or we have like special geometries that are developed for underground water or faults to basically harmonize the field. So in that place, so they kind of harmonize the field through the scalar waves of the geometry.
Yeah, yes, because what happens is that if you have an underground water or a fault or anything, you cannot move that.
Yeah.
What we discovered through trial and error is that if you place different types of geometry when it enters, let's say, your property and the place where it exits, you change the form that it's emitting. And this has to do with the work of biogeometry from Dr. Ibrahim Karim. And he has a lot of research about that, like how you can change the quality of the waveform, but not the quantity. That's why if you see nowadays, many people in their mobile phones, they stick some shapes or some geometry and things like that. Actually, if you measure the mobile phone, it will give you the same results. Yeah. But what is changing is the interaction in between our electromagnetic field and the electromagnetic field of the device.
So what we're now understanding in this new, more conscious science that is being developed is that we have physics of quantity, what Arturo was saying, and physics of quality. So it's not just about radiation. And I want to tell that to people that are listening, for example, 5G or whatever. Yes, it can be destructive. Yes, it has effects and Wi-Fi and all these things, but there are ways to add other waves over it through the scalar waves of geometry that you basically alter those physics of quality, or if you like, the information field. So you add other information that is carried literally over the carrier wave that is the EMF wave.
Super cool. So essentially you're like hacking it to give you health by putting your information on their toxic waves and making them reprogram. This is so brilliant. And I love that we're giving this description right now, because I think like, well, I mean, I want some of those. Give me that. Like way back in the day when there were.
I have so many things on my phone. I'm so sensitive to these things. I just have like whatever I can put, it can work for me.
Well, if you have any recommendations, I'll definitely drop them in the description of this video so that people can like get hooked up with that. When 5G was coming out and right before that, I don't know, close to like 2014, I was thinking like, what if we just, instead of having 5G, what if we have like 5G, like, and have it just be in the phi ratio, you know, and it'll just be super fast internet and it'll just be, you know what I mean? Like, why can't we just have it be one of those? And I don't know if anybody's doing that yet, but you seem like you know a lot of like physicists and electrophysicists, people that could maybe probably make that happen. Because wouldn't that be cool if we could just create our own networks of like super duper healthy healing Wi-Fi and 5G networks that were not a part of their whole fallen system? Like, that's what I'm here for, man. Let's get on that wave, right? But it's so cool. And for people that are maybe new to these concepts of like geometries in the fourth dimension, what I would call it, could you guys give like a breakdown of how those waves interact with us and why something like a little sticker on a cell phone could actually change? Like, could you give like a explanation for like a fourth grader?
Yes, I'll do my best.
Arturo is such a good teacher.
I just like to share. But I'll do my best. We have 5 levels of bodies. Literally, we have 5 different bodies. We have the physical biochemical body that you can touch it. So this is biochemical level. That's the first more dense body we have. Over this body, more subtle, we have the which is around us. And it changes the same way our physical body changes. This electromagnetic body that is represented as what people call the aura. So we have this electromagnetic body that you can measure it. It's not esoteric. There are devices that can measure it. And this is more subtle. And then over this, imagine like an egg around your physical body. This is electromagnetic. Over it, you have another more subtle body that it's the gravitational body that has the shape of an apple or a torus. So you have your physical body, then you have the electromagnetic egg, and then you have like a torus or like an apple shape that it's more subtle and it's bigger. And then over that, the fourth level, you have a fractal body, which is all around your big torus. So you have these 4 levels of bodies, physical bodies, and medicine, or when you want to heal something, depending on what level of your body is what type of energy you will use. For example, if you take a drug, that will go to your physical body, to your biochemical body. But if you have acupuncture will go to your electromagnetic body. It will stimulate different paths of electricity to change your electromagnetic body. But if you go and you place a geometry over your shoulder, or you put like, like these crystals with geometry over your, to this informational field, which is the third or more subtle level. So when people ask us, like, if I place this geometry, is it going to affect my health? It's like, it can affect your health positively or negatively. And the best way to know is through measuring the coherence of your heart and your brain waves. And this is easily done nowadays. Hartman Institute, they have a little simple device that you connect to your finger and actually measures if your heart, the waves of your heart, are coherent with your waves of your brain. And the highest level of coherence, let's say it's like a big yes, it's like, like your body saying, I actually like it. You have a whole system to know what is the best geometry for every client or every project, because it can be any geometry.
That's very important.
And there is some geometries that can actually be better for you, and others will not be so good. So for the fourth grade school guy, it will be like, yes, geometry and this informational substance can affect your subtle body, your gravitational or your fractal. You can do it. You can put any geometry to your physical body, and no, you will not have any immediate response. It's not like that, because it's more subtle. It's like homeopathy.
Yeah.
Many people were talking with them like, okay, how can you understand that homeopathy, some levels of homeopathy, it's so diluted that there is biochemical trace of the substance. How can that work? Well, if you are that we only have a biochemical physical body, no, it will never, you cannot explain it. Simple. But if you know that we have these other subtle bodies, then you can understand that homeopathy that has information, doesn't have a physical substance, it has information, can affect this more subtle body, and then this subtle body affect the other. Actually, when a physical body gets, when you got so unhealthy, it's because the other previous subtle bodies got unbalanced, and then eventually just express through your physical.
So again, it's really clear. It's just so choppy, but this information is so important. We are both off grid, so our off gridness is causing the call to drop. But it's so important that I think people will be willing to sit through all of that, or at least I know I would. I was very curious about the art, and you mentioned different powders and stuff. Are you guys making art? For example, if you can see behind me here, this is my new NFT project. It's called Dark Flower, and it's guided meditations based off medicinal flowers and other animals and entities, kind of shamanic and hypnotic meditations to access our better sleep states. Does that also apply to the electronic world? What about these powders that you're using? I'm also a resin artist and a mixed media artist. I'm obsessed with art right now. So could you tell us all the things about art and what you do?
Yeah, you mentioned also, I want to start with that. You mentioned also the electronic world. And for example, this is something that came out from the work we did with different projects, because they were like, okay, great. I have my, I don't know, healing center designed by you, and we will construct it now, and it's all with sacred geometry and materials. But what about my logo of the same like presence of the physical space online? So that's when people started to ask us, okay, can you design a logo with sacred geometry, because I want them coherent, I want them aligned. So for example, the presence we have online now has become even more and more important. And what is happening, I think, is we're moving from more physical worlds to the more energetical worlds. For the better, for the worse, there are all kinds of ways to see it, but that's what is going on. And we're kind of detaching more from the physical world. So I really believe that, for example, logo design is like our energy signature, our energy seal, like people would seal in the past physically on a piece of paper. Now it's our energy seal. And I think more than ever, our energetical presence online and our virtual presence is important to be aligned with the same elements. So I absolutely agree with what you mentioned. Then regarding art, I mean, logo design is a kind of art, absolutely. And regarding art, what we do is we can create customized art that comes after what we call a client analysis. And that is like their 5-element chart and the voice harmonic analysis and many things. And we come down to what geometry they need and what colors they need and many other things. And then the analysis of the space, where is it going to go? Because according to what area of the place or how is the layout there are many things. There are different things that we will choose. So that's where what we call the sacred triangle in geophilia is like how we bring the person or the client or the user of any building with the land and with the building in harmony, right? It's not just, okay, I'm creating a piece of art for you. I can do that. Yes, we can do that. But where are you going to place it? Because they have to come in harmony. So that's our work. And yes, we add this fractal powders that we use and also special like natural colors and things. And we weave with metal wires that we do like a customized alloy according to the client. It can even have like some amounts of gold or silver and other things. It depends on every situation. And that we can also do it on the floor. So we weave like these, let's say, grids that they're not visible. They can be visible, but usually they're hidden below the final floor. And I just want to give you like a practical example. We were called a few years ago by the biggest organic producer in Greece that by now has like a huge factory. He started in the 70s. He's a super humble guy. He wakes up still tractor in the land because that's what he loves to do. I'm talking like his land is like a whole city by now, and he loves what he does. It's huge. So he wanted to do an extension of like 1,000 square meters, but we couldn't intervene on the design because it's like the factory and it has to have specific materials and blocks and things. The only thing we could do is affect the floor. So what we did is we added all these powders in the concrete, and then we wove 1,000 square meters of grid that has been done according to this particular location and his energy analysis. So he came back to us like 2 years ago, and that's actually in the main page of Geophilia if you wanted to check it out. The images are there. This place was created, this new extension, so he could store his seeds for the next season to put them in the land. And also his products, because then he has some products that are like, he creates different products from spaghetti or I don't know, whatever, different things. So he would store them there. And he said, hey guys, the seeds that I stored in the place that you made, and we didn't even do any design or, you know, the walls are made of metal panels, like the worst, nothing else. They grew through time, the seeds that I stored in the old building that I have. The images are there. If you want to check them, they're in the main page of geophilia.org. And it was fascinating. I mean, we know this thing works, but every time we get this feedback from projects and clients, it's just, this is real food for us. This is like nourishment. So it's really beautiful. So yes, art, the design of the art and the materials used, it can really change the harmonics of the space, the way we call it in geophilia, the space harmonics, right? The coherence level, let's say, the fractality level is another way to say it.
I love that. Okay, so that touches on a couple of questions that we can go kind of quick on. Is the voice harmonics, when you're analyzing it, the person's voice or like the voice of the land, or?
It's the client's.
So you take like a sound sample of their voice and then...
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, then we have what we call, we create the mandala through there. We use cymatics, and then we create what is called a power symbol. So that can be used as part of a logo in the future. It can be used as part of art. It can be printed. It can be used to weave a geometry in the floor. It's just like your power symbol, let's say. So yeah, and that is done with the colors according to the 5-element chart. So it's like a whole process. It's a long process, but it's really worth it, because what we want to do is to create something custom for every person. I shared that recently in a newsletter that we send every week, and I was saying architecture is exactly the same as nutrition. And I've been searching and reading and training myself in nutrition for many years because I'm interested. And I can say after all this research, there is no one nutrition for everybody. Nobody's the same. Then we don't have one nutrition that we need for all our lives, because we change, because our hormones change. For a woman that is pregnant or a woman that is 18 years old, we need different things. And when we're 80 years old, we need different nutrition. So the same is with architecture. You cannot say that every person needs the same design or the same geometry. There is no one geometry that is good for everybody. We're all different. We have more masculine or feminine properties. We have different elements, like these 5 elements. Somebody is more fiery, let's say, per se, or our other one is more water. So we need different things, and we need to really be aware of that and respect that in the design that we do.
I love this so much. I mean, honestly, you're confirming a lot of things that are in my intuition already. The voice tells me everything. Like, for example, I mean, this is maybe a more intimate one, but I will know if I'm like meant to be romantically involved with somebody by their voice. Like, there's so much information that can be right. Like there's so much information that can be transmitted by the voice. That's mind blowing that you guys are doing that and creating the geometries of it. Like next level. Okay. And that also touched on the biogeometry and farming. I just have one question. Have you heard about electroculture, adding copper to your fields? And I'm experimenting with that right now. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, we have heard about it, and actually we have been applying a similar principle, weaving all these copper sacred geometry grids under the floor and in the walls. And basically, what has to do with the electroculture is that you put a piece of non-conductive material, and then you spin some copper wire around it. It has to be in certain direction. So what you're doing is that the electromagnetic field that exists in the whole planet, you're forcing or channeling it to whatever place. And because, you have this electromagnetism of the Earth and you have the wire itself, there are many people reporting 30, 40, 70% growth enhancement in their fields or in their fruit trees. We have been using it.
This concept goes back to the alternation of conductive and non-conductive material. And this is how orgonite works. This has been used in ancient temples. We also use that in our work with architecture. So you do layers of conductive and non-conductive. And there is something about this combination that creates like a bioactive field. What that means is make things grow, helps our biology be healthier, helps plants grow, and many other things. So it applies to many aspects of what can be done, not just in agriculture. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, the specific, let's say, scientific concept is called capacitor, biological capacitor.
Yeah.
And that's the concept of electroculture.
Yeah.
It's like geopuncture, they call it.
Yeah.
You take
puncture.
Instead of doing it in your body, you do it in the earth, and you place a needle, let's say, in a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I like it. Does it go clockwise or counterclockwise?
If you're looking at it top-down view, it's clockwise.
You cut out for a little bit. Clockwise?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so from the top down, I wind it downwards clockwise. Cool.
Yes.
Okay, I'm doing it wrong. I don't have wire wrapped around yet. I just stuck a copper rod with a stick next to it. But I will say that in itself has actually produced some very large vegetables right there. It doesn't spread throughout my bed yet, but like my cilantro, it bolted, it got huge, and my eggplant also. But pretty exciting stuff. Let's check this out. We already kind of covered all of those. The last question, we'll just do 2 more. How about harmonic inclusiveness and space harmonics? What are those concepts?
I will say in layman terms so everybody can understand, because I know overwhelming. Imagine you have an orchestra with different musicians and different musical instruments. Eventually, what you want to listen is a harmonic result, right? So in order for that to happen, you need the different instruments to play in harmony with each other. And musical notes is just frequencies, it's just waves. The same thing applies to architecture to create space harmonics and wave interference. And what it means is that the way the different aspects of architectural design come together, they produce a harmonic orchestra, meaning the shape and the geometry and the proportion and the color and the materials and the earth radiation and so on and so forth. They come together as a harmonic orchestra and they give out a very beautiful sound, if you like. Goethe has a beautiful phrase that I always loved, which is architecture is frozen music, literally, because music is geometry, is proportion. And the only difference from architecture and music is that music is proportion that moves through time, as architecture is frozen music. You just froze it there and you made that happen. On another note, I just wanted to share that I really believe pretty soon, in a 1 or 2 decades, we will have moving architecture. Our architecture will start to move its shape and its geometry and everything according to the sun, according to this, according to that. So it will just be, we will go to 4D architecture, which means that moves through time. But Arturo has been studying, I mean, these are all also things from Dan Winter. He's really the expert on harmonic inclusiveness. I don't know if you want to share something more in depth. I just wanted to share in a way that's very simple for people to understand.
Yeah, harmonic inclusiveness means, imagine you have a row of 7 cars, like you're in a highway with 7 lines of cars and they all want to go eventually and pass through. So what can you do so all these 7 lines of cars go through one line?
Without crashing.
Without crashing and making a complete mess. And the concept is harmonic inclusiveness. You have to accelerate them every time more and more and more so they don't crash in between them. And harmonic inclusiveness is what happens when you use phi ratio, when you use Goldman mean. You create more harmonic inclusiveness of waves. Imagine waves, sound waves or light waves, waves geometry moving. You make them blend, you make them in an order that they can all exist without crashing each other. It's literally like the Arrow and all these amazing projects, private projects, they're doing that like mathematically.
Yeah.
They have these protocols.
So cool. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could have this conversation ad infinitum and it would be amazing. And we
can have another one at some time later.
I'd love to host you guys. Like maybe we could do a workshop here on the island sometime. We can talk about that later, but I mean, I'd love to host you guys here. So I just want to say thank you. And I know that people are going to be very interested in learning more about your work. And I know you've got books and you've got courses. So where can people access if they want to get a hold of you, if they want to hire you, or if they want to have a consultation or your services? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Just go to our website, geophilia.org. That's GEOPH. So Geophilia is like the love for the earth. It's actually a Greek root there. And we have email, WhatsApp, they can contact us. We have tons of information. The links to our courses and our books are all there. And there is also a page called Media. We have interviews and presentations we've given so people can just learn so much from that for free. And with email or WhatsApp or Telegram, we are in all
and
these.
Something very good that actually Lydia put a lot of hours and days of research into this PDF. You can go there, download the PDF that is called the 7 Secrets
to create
a sleep sanctuary.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have problems sleeping, and it's like really key points of how to improve your health.
It's a many pages PDF that you can just download for free, and you can read through it. And we are sharing like the best ways to create like a very, let's say, protected sanctuary for your sleep, because sleep is like a major block of our health, and architecture plays a role in it. So we have our best tips and a lot of research there. So make sure you download that. It's really, really high value and like more than a decade of research.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, I'm downloading that for sure. I need help with my sleep. It's all over the place. I will include all of your links in the description below. You guys, it has been such an honor and such a pleasure to reconnect. And I'm so grateful. I can't wait till we get to do this again, hopefully in person. And if you guys are doing retreats or anything like that, Like, I don't know if you guys do you do retreats and like immersions?
We do retreats. Right now we don't have something planned, but we will in the near future. So everything will be announced in the page. And also, if anyone is interested to collaborate or host us all around the world, and seminars and courses, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. I
Thank you
think
so much. We really
so
love to
much.
connect with you, and a really beautiful energy you share.
oh my God, likewise, right back at you.